So, Dan and Galen, nice to meet you. It's a couple of different faces for me to see coming down here at Ashon pools, and when you start speaking, people realise you don't have a Devonshire accent either. So, obviously, you've come over from Canada. First impressions of Ashonsworthy pools, what have you thought, and how does it differ so greatly from Canada?
Well, first of all, it's a very intimate water compared to what we're used to fishing. We're used to fishing very vast and expansive bits of water. The the fish in here to begin with are just absolutely incredible compared to what we have in Canada. Like, you just don't get what's in these waters where we are. You know, you get the torpedoes and commons and whatnot that are just bulldog and bulldog, but these fish are just something special, and the Devon scenery is just incredible.
Yeah, and we're used to fishing a pretty big river, so fishing still water without any snags is actually a really nice change. Like, it's pretty rugged. Some of the snags that are available, we have a lot of zebra mussels and all the substrate, as well as it changes actually with the spring too. We get different trees, like trees get brushed down the river, and yeah, it is different.
So the fishing may be seemingly a bit more comfortable, but I understand you didn't like the roads here.
Yeah, there's a few white knuckle moments there.
Let's move things back to Pallatrax. Of course, when I'm coming down here, we do talk all things Pallatrax. These are Pallatrax run venue. So how did you guys get involved with Pallatrax, being all the way from Canada?
So it's a pretty cool story, and it's nice when social media is actually used correctly. And one of team members, Rich Shaw, he saw one of my underwater videos on one of the a Facebook group, fishing Facebook group. And he just messaged me. He said, "There's a team, Pallatrax team, that you might be interested in joining. They'd be interested to see what you're doing," because I had been making my own stone weights prior to even knowing Pallatrax even existed, just because I saw the benefit of using them in my local water, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. And I'd been fishing with Dan at the time a lot, and we started to use them, and it literally it's kind of just snowballed from there.
Yeah, I kind of jumped on your coattail, and I was like, I think this is a really cool opportunity, and this is, unique to something we don't have in Canada. Like this whole approach, and using the environment to your advantage. Like, that's just not something that's done very often, where you're using something that Mother Nature provides to tactically improve your odds.
I like the environmental aspect that Stones promotes, I guess you could say, and it's just. I've snorkeled. Yeah, I've snorkeled my swims before, and I've found method feeders. I've found big spring feeders with a big lead piece inside that I personally had used and lost, and that didn't really sit well with me either. So it was a good thing to do, I think. And if I had left those on the bank, I probably wouldn't be very happy with myself. Or if I found them, I wouldn't be happy with anyone else. So yeah, moving on to Stones, it felt right, and it has its tactical advantages as well.
And it's not just fishing related stuff either, right? Like, living in Canada and whatnot, there are people that'll just put shopping carts, bits of cars, whatever, into, water bodies and whatnot. So as anglers, you kind of have to be that steward and that example for the people that just don't care, because if you don't, who's going to care?
So I understand clearly you've just expressed as a big environmental reason for why you jumped on board with the Pallatrax ethos, but also I understand you fish with the Carp, Canadian Carp Society, the SSF. How has changing over to the Pallatrax stone system affected your performance, not just on the environmental side, but more the actual catch rates and things like that?
So right off the hop, we were preparing for the SSF tournament, and Palm we'd placed an order, and we'd sent over some stones and grips and a steam link for us to use, and he'd gone over it with us, showing us the LQ rig, and we had got it just before the tournament started. So we tied up a bunch of rigs, and I remember going down to the swim that I'd pre-baited, and I'd been watching a big common on film throughout the week, and trying to pattern kind of where it was comfortably feeding. And I placed my rig, my LQ rig and stone, just off to where I'd seen it kind of patrolling, and within a half an hour I had it, and I couldn't believe it. And I'd landed a bunch of fish that day, and then later in the week I recaptured that same fish and ended up helping me essentially win that first tournament for the team and individual division. It was just mind-blowing, and since then we've had some great success winning a few along the way.
Yep, Brendan and I, my brother, we actually went to that same swim, and we knew of a bunch of bigger fish that hadn't been seen for quite a few years, and they were very rig savvy. So we took, the stone system and everything that Simon had kind of talked to us about, and we put it into action. And within, a few days, we had caught a good majority of those fish that hadn't been seen. And the only thing I can kind of say that was the difference and the change in change in them coming out was using the stone system and blending in with the environment, because these fish were used to seeing method feeders and leads and traditional tactics and stuff like that. And I think it gave that small little bit of an advantage, because they weren't seeing something that they were used to normally, and they kind of let their guard down and just picked up the baits when we needed them to, and slipped over the cord, and it just kind of all fell into place.
And even earlier that week, when I was pre-fishing for the tournament, I had tied up a D-rig off of YouTube, and I had making the loop too large, so I'd filmed my session, and within an hour I had 10 fish pick up my hook bait and were able to eject it, and you could see the bait being picked up but the hook sticking out of its mouth, or they were just able to pick it up and eject, and even though it was a fresh hook out of the package. And but on that 10th fish, I hooked one, but that was within an hour. So had I not had the camera, I wouldn't have even known that something had been wrong. But switching over to the LQ rig, I see an immediate increase in hookup ratio. Like it's like as soon as they pick it up, I'll catch them, or it'll be the second time around type of thing. It's just a better ratio overall.
Now, you mentioned the Canadian Carp Society in a match sense there. You got involved with some tournaments. Are there other ways that you two are involved in the Carp Society over there?
Yeah, so I recently just came into the ops team role, and I'm the benefits and promotional manager. So I go about reaching out to companies and looking for, see if they want a partnership with the organization, or if they're willing to sponsor an event. Like we have tournaments, we have socials, stuff like that. So that's my role. I reach out, and I'm the friendly guy that kind of breaks the ice and tries to get the word out there that we're here, and we're trying to partner up with other Canadian companies and collectively work together so that we all benefit.
Yeah, and my role within the CCS ops team is to run their social media. So we have an Instagram channel Instagram, as well as Facebook and YouTube channel. And we just try and showcase what Canada has to offer for carp fishing, as well as their anglers. And it's been really cool to see people starting to follow and comment and actually take interest in the fishery that we have, and it's just really nice to see the interest that's starting to grow.
And it's not necessarily even anglers, really. Like, it's the general public. Like, they see what we're out doing or whatever, and they come and strike a conversation up with you, and they're like, wow, you guys are really like some of the nicest people we've had conversations with. You're not like most of the the anglers we've had conversations with that can't give us the time of day. You actually sit down and explain what you're doing or whatever, or why, just have a general good conversation.
And now I'm sure we'll get back onto the Canadian side of things. Well, we'll bring it back to the UK as we are here. Ashon's really pools. Have there been any standout benefits from the trip so far, or what you've noticed that might be slightly different here to Canada?
The technical aspect, hands down. Coming here, I really realized really quickly that if you're not spot on with your presentation and your rig placement and like making sure every little detail, and you've removed every negative variable possible, just drastically increases your odds. Whereas in Canada, a lot of it is, you can get away with pub chucking, you can get away with being 50 yards off, 10 yards off, whatever your spot, and still have results because there's big shoals of fish. But here, when you only have a couple opportunities at a bite, you need to have everything dialed in and spot on. And that's been a real eye-opener and a bit stressful, if I'm honest.
That whole paying attention to detail thing has been key, and being consistent with that. As soon as you find something that works, being consistent, working that swim, getting the spots baited and your rigs on the spots you need, and even casting at fish. Like showing fish, that's something that I don't normally do at home, and it's something I need to put back into my fishing, because I had the experience here where I had seen a fish, we were chatting, and I ran down and cast right on top of one, and within a few minutes it was on, and it's really rewarding. And it's just been, overall it's been very rewarding, because we're actually I don't know if our expectations were kind of low, how well we would do, and we've actually caught some fish and had some success, so it's really nice.
So you've noticed some big changes and differences to fishing back home. Are there elements that you think you will try to take back to Canada, or are you looking forward to the much more laid-back pub chucking you just mentioned?
No, absolutely. There are things that I've learned this week. Simon showed me a few things in regards to, like, using little bits of, PVA nugget to wrap it around your hooks to absolutely make sure that it can't come back and wrap on itself. Like, small things like that, I think, are going to make a huge difference back home, because a lot of the time, you think you're good, right? You cast out or whatever, and then next thing you know, you've got yourself landed on top of a tree branch or something like that, and that little bit of PVA foam kind of helps it just lay a little bit easier so that it's presented nicely, and you just increase your odds. I mean, we do have multiple opportunities, obviously, but why take the risk? Get that fish on the first take instead of a couple takes.
Yeah, and a big thing for me, I had a nice tutorial with Palm, and we were talking about clipping up and using just tape as a measurement of kind of distance on my line, so that I can consistently hit the same spot over and over. And that just simple tactic, I think, will be a massive benefit to me, because of how vast our waters are and where we're baiting. Like, if you're spotting out, and if you're not necessarily using a marker flow, then we can at least find that spot and stay on our piles, because it can be, you can kind of forget where you've actually placed your bait if you're not fishing the margin. We do a lot of margin fishing, but if you're going to fish distance or where the fish are sometimes, then I think it'll be a very key tactic that'll really help.
And just going back to the rigs, you were saying that you used to use D-rig and saw some issues there. You do a lot of the underwater filming.
Yeah.
From doing all of that, have you come down to a key rig that you stick to now, or does it change?
LQ rig. That is the rig that I use. I don't really mess around with it too much. Sometimes I think we've used the German rig a little bit, just having that bait screw option and quick change for pop-ups, but generally I'll stick with the LQ rig, just because it's consistent, very consistent in getting that fish.
And there's a lot less variables that can go wrong with it, right? Like, it's just, you get that hair rig dialed in, you get your kicker straight on, you make sure everything is where it's supposed to be, and it'll just perform like it's supposed to. Where a lot of these other rigs, there's not really room for error. Like, you need to be precise and really have the experience to get your head around it, and I think that's where a lot of people go wrong.
Yeah. And a huge thing too with the underwater filming is that your rig will get pushed around a lot. If it gets picked up and dropped, or if a tail brushes out of the way, you need a rig that will reset itself, and that LQ rig with that stiff boom section, and it makes it a lot easier for it to kind of come up and back down on the spot and still be presented properly, which is key.
Now, moving on from rigs, and we'll talk a bit more about bait. And I understand you've done a lot of Zoom calls with Simon over the last few years. Talking about baits, it's not as easy just for you to pop down here as it is for me. So what information have you gathered from those Zoom calls, and how have you implemented it into your fishing?
I guess the biggest thing for me, which was an eye-opener, is no bait is created equal. There's a lot of bait out there that's, of a different quality. And if you can make your bait to the highest quality of an actual food content, your results will speak for themselves. It might take you a little bit longer to establish it as a food source, because they're wild fish, right? So they're used to eating crayfish, zebra mussels, and that kind of thing. But once you've established it as a food source for them, they'll return to that spot to look for that food source time and time and time again. And not only that, but other fish species will be drawn to it. So you're kind of creating almost like a bird table effect for all these fish to come in, and it just creates a feeding frenzy, and the minnows get in there, the bass get in there, the pike come in because the minnows and everything are in there, and then the carp will cruise in, and it's been mind-blowing, the difference, because I attempted to make bait in the past, and I remember watching film with Galen, and these fish were kicking the baits around like a soccer ball. The year after spending a winter talking to Simon and really kind of got my head around it, we put a recipe that I've been working on out, and the difference was incredible. It was just savage. These fish were coming in and just demolishing the area, just trying to pick up every last little bit, knocking each other out of the way. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think for me, the biggest thing is it's kind of simplified things, because YouTube is just there's just a plethora of information out there, and finding a simplified system that works has been just eye-opening and just really nice, because we don't really have that kind of base. There's a lot of assumed knowledge that I find UK anglers have, because they've been doing it since they're a little kid, and for us it's just something we've kind of picked up kind of later in life, and just learned on our own, and you kind of glean things off of mainly YouTube and what you read on the internet. So it was really refreshing, sitting down and speaking with Palm, and just going through things and why he does things the way they are, and he's just drawing us to the conclusion that he's found, and he's left it up to us to kind of play with it and customize it to our own fishing, which has been really nice.
So I understand, obviously, you've got on board with the whole Pallatrax system, the ethos behind it, so much so you now have roles within Pallatrax. Can you tell us a bit more about your roles within Pallatrax?
Yep. So Galen and I actually, we when we came on board, Palm was looking kind of for some people to, help out with the social media side of things, the Facebook group, and, keeping it active and getting members talking and stuff like that. And then Galen and I were actually talking, and we're like, well, let's, I think an Instagram account would be like, great idea kind of thing. So we got that going and running, whatever. And then we also got the TikTok up. So we basically just run the social media side of things and help Palm and Sue in that, and provide content and catch reports and that.
Yeah, and we both have an interest in photography and videography, and trying to create like reels and nice edited footage and edited photos, and just showcasing kind of what the Pallatrax team, the team page, has to offer, and there's some really great anglers out there, and it's nice to just be able to showcase kind of their captures and what they're using, and I think things have picked up really well, and the accounts are growing, and there's a lot of nice positive comments on kind of what we're doing. So it is refreshing to see that.
And also, again, you've said a lot of times now about the underwater filming that you guys do out there. Firstly, how much have you learned from that? And also, is there a way for other people to access some of this footage themselves through can you say what these channels are that you've set up as well?
Yeah, so kind of the biggest things that I've noticed is just different feeding patterns. So you can get fish coming in, and if they're competitively feeding, they're less wary, and that's a great, if you can create that situation, then you can really smash them. But I find it very difficult to catch those single fish moving in that are just picking up single baits and are more wary. And we do a lot of this in the margin. I'll swim the cameras out. So and we've got a lot of that underwater footage up on the TikTok and Instagram for Pallatrax, as well as on the Facebook page. And I have my own YouTube channel that I have that kind of showcases these. I'm just trying to get as much video out there, just showing what the stone system can do for you, and it's just been eye-opening, and I've got a lot of positive feedback from that, so it's really nice.
And what is that YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is O&T Carpin.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description for people that are interested in looking at the underwater stuff, which I'm sure is most people. Now, you've been using the grips hooks quite a lot as well. How's that benefited you?
First and foremost, the durability. A lot of the times when we're going out fishing, we're not just catching 1, 2, 3 fish. Some days we'll go out and we'll catch 15, 20 when it's really going hot in the spring. And that hook point and just the robustness and reliability of the grips in itself, that alone was a huge difference, because I've used hooks from all kinds of different brands and different sides of the industry, and just been really disappointed. But the grips just time and time again hold up. And then the ability, if we are in a situation where we end up with a fish in a snag and it cuts off or whatever, we know that it's able to safely eject that rig, and I don't have to leave a session going, oh great, I've left a bunch of end tackle trailing in a fish's mouth and he's hung up in a tree, because you really don't know what happens after you break off. So getting rid of that barb and having a hook that's able to just be removed from that fish, and it's able to swim off and live its life happy and healthy, and I can sleep soundly at night.
And something that's been really amazing is that there's very limited mouth damage, if at all, in any, or if any at all. And it and it's really nice to see, because I've used other hooks that you can get tears and things like that, and it's nice when you can get the fish into the net and the hook just pops out and you can deal with it. And another thing too, like I like to, I've given a few away to my friends that have kids, because if they're using grips for just like panfish fish, like float fishing with worms or whatever, and they're throwing hooks around, at least if they get caught in their clothing or in the net or by chance themselves, it can pop out pretty easy.
We were discussing before the cameras rolling about the style of, or the type of carp you're catching out there. I understand they are torpedo shaped, muscular, and just hit and hold. So of course the rest of your tackle needs to be up to the game, and that's where the gamma comes in. So has that been a great use of tackle as well there?
It's been incredible. And honestly, its castability and its durability as well, and abrasion resistance has been nice. Like we'll be bringing in fish and you can see the line fraying, but it's because it's been rubbing up against rocks or trees or zebra mussels for that matter, and it's kind of, you can see it fraying, but it's still holding on, and it's we use the fluorocarbon as well, the gamma fluorocarbon, and it's been great as a leader material, shock leader material, to help with that abrasion and keep those fish on. And yeah, we've really enjoyed using it.
And even in so much so in like regards to how it's able to stand up to our environment, because a lot of the Canadian summers, it gets really hot over there, and most line, if you're using like a monofilament or any gel spun line, really, after a while, that sun beating on it, it just starts to deteriorate, and it just, after a while, you got to respool. But the gamma, it just seems to just be able to take whatever Mother Nature wants to throw at it and still perform like it's supposed to out of the package, day in and day out.
And I love too that it doesn't, you don't necessarily get that memory either. It's really nice to play a fish on, and with mono that I've used in the past, like I'm constantly stripping off a bunch of it because it's coiling, or I have to soak the spool in water or hot water to try to keep its form, whatever. But it's been really like refreshing to use.
Well, Dan, Galen, thank you very much for your time. I understand you've got a pretty early flight tomorrow to start your journey back to Canada, so hopefully the last few hours you've got of this session, you'll catch a few more. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Really interested in hearing about your fishing out in Canada, and obviously I'll flash up all the links and things to your social medias below. And it's been really interesting. So cheers for your time, and hopefully I'll see more from you guys soon.
Thank you very much.